So what, because you've quite often, like, I don't know where I would have been. I guess I was in a different space. I had like such an intense trust of you. And then when you started sharing, like, there's I don't know if it was like, and like the bubble analogy comes back, there was a space. And if you invite anyone, so even if it's like a really well-meaning, beautiful old midwife, they come in, it's still something coming into the space, or a test. It's something coming into the space. And it was like, is that worth it? Because it's going to pierce this invisible connection that you had. It's a subtle something. I don't know, it's like a muse. Is it going to scare the birth muse off? I don't know how to describe it, but I was like, because I'd been so intensely talking about that invisible something at SuperFeast with the business that only I seem to be able to feel when it gets pierced. And again, I lightly use the word violated when I feel I've allowed something to come into the space when it shouldn't have been necessarily there. And that's when you were saying, I was like, oh, yeah, I completely hear you.
It's the ceremonial aspect. And I think that piece that it's actually interesting you're saying that, because I hadn't made that connection, but I did a short online workshop while I was pregnant around ceremony in everyday life. And I think if you think of pregnancy as a ceremonial journey, which it kind of is, very slow, long one, but it's this kind of preparation that culminates in this ceremonial. For us, it was a night, like that big, let's say that's the big ayahuasca ceremony. Yeah, like it sort of peaks in this moment, and really protecting that ceremonial space throughout the process. And again, this is your own definition of what protecting that means and what that feels like. But yeah, for us, I think we made that decision very early on, possibly even before we conceived, that that's what we wanted to do. And so it felt very much like a container that we were building. And I can feel, especially now having this conversation, like that we were really protecting that, and that letting, and it, we didn't talk a lot about our plans. We didn't broadcast them. We were quite careful about who we told. I was definitely really aware of, like, it wasn't until I was 2 weeks late with him really that I even shared it to my social media what we were planning. I was very, with friends that I trusted, obviously I was happy to share that with them, but for some people I could just feel that it wasn't appropriate, and we'd talk about having a home birth, or we never lied, but we were definitely loose with
not lying
definition. Well, it's like we're having a home birth. Are you using midwife? Not sure. Like it was just that kind of stuff where we haven't decided yet. People are like, 36 weeks, so I haven't decided. I'm like, yeah, we've decided. But it's like,
I mean, pointing out, like, it's kind of like, and of course it's an obvious defining something I was experiencing, but it's like, you brought up like the ayahuasca ceremony, not them. And just so we bring it up as an example, neither of us have sat for, 6 years, whatever. It's not like so just in case you're thinking, it's one of our major practices. It's not currently. It was a great one really at one point. Beautiful, and great for analogy. But quite often it's like any ceremony, or if it's a Vipassana or some kind of big ceremony, the crescendo, that shiny thing, you think, oh, that's the actual ceremony. But it's always the case, like, I remember when I booked in for my dieta, my 10-day,
it starts there.
Bang, I was on. And I really didn't understand that so much when I was younger. And so I had multiple things committed to, not realizing that I was in multiple ceremonies at one time. And I think that was something this pregnancy, a lot of people were asking about, like, did we call the baby in or the baby call itself in? And I think we kind of both slightly experienced the presence. We're just kind of like, there's someone there, but it wasn't like with Aya, where it was like I was having, and over in Peru in ceremony, I was having massive like initiation feelings into fatherhood. You could feel her around in the farm, and kind of, we felt her. She was like going to arrive, and it was much more practical. With Leo, I think we had decided we're at a point where we've got our life ecosystem set up to it where we think it's like a really great time to transition into having some more kiddies. And you were moving out of the business and running the business. I was moving in, so on and so forth. But that was the beginning when we were like, hey, we're really gonna start. That was like the first degree of entering into that ceremony. And it is the same space as when you have that ultimate pinnacle. But when we're pregnant, boom, there's a little bit of a shift and a different bit of intensity, but it's still like, we're going to talk about birth partners whether it's father or whoever. Not that I think I'm going to be dropping any truth bombs on doulas and midwives or mid-husbands that have lots of experience. This is just my grassroots feelings, but nonetheless, there are empowering ones for people who aren't specialized midwives or birth partners, especially for a father. I felt great knowing that, though, that ceremony, it's not just great, I've got 9 months to get all my shit together, even though I was working really hard and going through my own business ceremonies constantly. It was knowing that as the partner I was on, and I had responsibilities, and maybe they got a little bit more intense towards the end of the pregnancy. But nonetheless, we started kind of carving out what that space looked like. So when we got further and further towards birth, I felt like I was in such a familiar place every time I dropped into that birth space with you that I was it wasn't jarring or shocking, and because it was familiar and I knew you were protecting that space and living in it constantly, I was yeah, you know it. You know this terrain, because it's a terrain. And it's when,